Welcome to Everyday Linux User, and today we're doing a full review of the Everyday Linux User channel in 2024. And I'd like to say thank you to everyone who's visited this channel in the last year, everyone who's subscribed, everyone who's commented, whether it's positive or negative. Thank you for joining me on this journey. So YouTube send YouTube creators updates weekly, monthly and annually. So I've just received my annual update from YouTube, and in the last year I've had 534,800 views and 1,510 new subscribers. So thank you to each and every one of you who's hit that button. 7,416 likes, 1,779 shares, 817 comments, some positive, some negative, and I've had 138 uploads. So I'm going to briefly go over what was covered in each month, and if you feel like you've missed a video along the way, feel free to click on the actual channel and then you can go and visit these videos. So in January I showed you how to set up and log into a Raspberry Pi 5 and how to log in from another machine. I also showed you how to use Ventoid to create a multi-boot USB. I showed you how to install Peppermint OS and gave a review of Peppermint OS. And I showed you how to switch between Wayland and X on a Pi, how to change desktops on a Pi, how to speed up a VNC on a Pi, and I also tried a new thing where I tried different Linux distributions that people may not have heard of, and the first one I tried was Marbox. In February I followed that up with a review of Endless OS, and I gave guides to Flatpaks and app images. I also tried Watos, Ubuntu, SDesk, Vanilla OS and Solus OS. In March I tried Ubuntu. I also showed you how to use Nano and how to use Vim. I also showed you how to use LibreOffice Writer and how to do a mail merge using LibreOffice Writer. I also tried Bunsen Labs and 4M Linux. In April I showed you how to install MX Linux on the Raspberry Pi and how to boot a Raspberry Pi from an SSD. I also showed you how you can install Ubuntu using VirtualBox in under 1 minute. Distributions I tried in April were Makulu, Kashi, Tuxedo and Sparky. I showed you how to retro game on the Raspberry Pi and how to install Ubuntu on a Pi. I also showed you how to set up the Pi Moroni base on the Pi so that you could add a M2 drive to it, and then I showed you how to play Fortnite on the Raspberry Pi, and I also reviewed the top 25 Linux distros. In May I asked the question, do distro hoppers know more about Linux? And I also gave you a guide to the Distro Hoppers Guide to the Galaxy. I showed you how to create the ultimate XFCE desktop experience and how to set up KVM and Virt Manager. In May I tried Alma Linux, PC Linux OS, Kubuntu and Ubuntu 24.04. In June I asked why is there no Chrome snap package, and I showed you how to install Chrome on Ubuntu. One of my most popular videos of the year was Ubuntu versus Kubuntu, and I also showed you how to install Ubuntu 24.04. I showed you how to run Windows 11 on a virtual machine, add Microsoft fonts to Ubuntu, how to run Android apps using Linux, and how to get an Xbox controller working using Waydroid. In July I tried a new feature where I started using a Linux distribution for a month, and that way it gives a longer review and gives more of a how did I get on over the course of a month for a distribution. So the first one of those was Ubuntu, so there was a video called A Month on Ubuntu. I showed you how to use AI to verify Linux distributions. I showed how to set up remote desktop on Linux. I gave you 3 command line Linux habits to learn. I showed you 3.5 new Firefox features. I asked why is Elementary the worst distro? You might want to subscribe if you haven't already, because coming up in the first week in January is a review of Elementary OS 8 and I'm looking to see if it's improved at all. And then I also in July asked why is Void the best distro? And finally I showed how to create an Endeavour OS USB. In August I did a month on MX Linux and I gave a full step-by-step Fedora installation guide. I showed you how to compress a folder full of videos using FFmpeg. I showed you things to do after installing the Fedora Budgie Atomic, and I also showed you how to theme Budgie using Fedora Atomic. I gave a guide showing you everything you need to know about Linux. And another one of my most popular videos was Windows versus Linux 13 key differences. I asked the question, can Linux save a budget mini PC? And I also came up with the ultimate hard drive partitioning guide and a step-by-step guide to Linux file permissions. In September it was a month on Fedora, and I showed how to install Debian using a live USB as opposed to using the net installer. I also showed you how to create a Pop! OS USB, and I also showed you how to fix a USB drive, because sometimes it has a protected partition and you have to remove the protected partition to be able to format it again. I showed you how to add Wi-Fi to LXQT systems, how to install the Tamil 99 keyboard layout using Debian. I showed how to install Linux Mint on an old PC, how to encrypt home folders using Debian, and I came up with a complete LXQT customization guide. I am aware that I keep saying LXQT and it should be LXQt, but it's a force of habit, I'm afraid. So in October I came up with a month on Debian, and I showed you how to dual boot Windows 11 and Linux Mint, and I also came up with the ultimate Linux Mint setup guide. Another one of my most popular videos of the year was Mint versus Ubuntu versus Fedora versus Windows. I did another video called How many distros can I review in 5 minutes? Spoiler alert, it was 19. Other videos for October included Can online tools replace the Linux desktop? I gave a review of some of the educational programs for Linux. I also showed you how to use FFmpeg to edit videos, how to install Microsoft fonts using Linux Mint, and how to install PokerStars on Debian. So moving on to November, not far away now, I gave a review of Linux Mint, so a month on Linux Mint. I came up with the ultimate Cinema desktop customization guide, how to create a Linux Mint Debian Edition USB, Linux Mint Debian Edition install guide. I showed you how to create 10 distros on one USB using Ventoy. And I asked the question, is there a difference between Linux Mint and Linux Mint Debian Edition? I gave a review of Format Labs for converting videos versus FFmpeg. And I showed how to dual boot OpenSUSE and Windows. I also showed how to create persistent USB drives and how to theme a Linux USB drive that is running Ventoy. December's been quite short, so I gave my Linux journey over the last 20 years, a complete GNOME customization guide, I ranked the top 10 Linux distribution websites, and I came up with 5 reasons not to use OpenSUSE Tumbleweed, which hasn't proven that popular. And this is the last video before Christmas, and after Christmas I'm going to do a viewers comments video, and then in the new year we're starting off with a month on OpenSUSE, and I've got a review of Elementary OS 8 coming out as well. So as well as all of these long form videos, I also came up with a fairly large number of shorts. I'm not sure if the audience for the shorts is the same as the audience for the long view videos, but I appreciate everyone who watches either one of the formats, or indeed if you watch both of them. And I'd like to thank all the people that have given super thanks through the year. You see that button in the bottom corner there, and anyone who's clicked the membership button, and anyone who's hit that subscribe button. And if you think you like Everyday Linux User and you want to see more content from Everyday Linux User, I encourage you to hit that button now. And I wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and thank you for watching. I'll see you next time on Everyday Linux User.